just going to get the settings all ready for everybody. Brilliant. And good to see everybody arriving. As everybody arrives, it would be brilliant if you could change your Zoom name so that we know who we're looking at and talking to in this space. You can do that by right-clicking on your image, and the option to change your name will come up. Nice little Zoom tip there for you. I am Lorna. I'm the marketing manager at Semble, and I'm going to give you a brief introduction to today's session before handing over to Corinna, the funding doctor, for a deep dive into income streams. And for those of you who don't know, Semble is a social enterprise, and we run community action campaigns, connecting businesses with community groups, and funneling funding and volunteers into community groups to help with local projects. And for anyone who wants to be the first to know about the funding opportunities that we have coming up from ourselves, but also from other organisations in this sector, you can sign up to our mailing list. You can also be featured on our website. Semble is a platform that celebrates community action and allows community groups to upload projects and write blogs and share events. And so do join that network if that appeals. I will link to both of those in the chat now, so you can sign up to the newsletter or feature on our website. Now, we've been running a series of workshops. This is our 10th workshop since our first launched digitally at the end of March, and they've been incredibly useful spaces for people to come together, share, learn and connect. And we've covered everything from engaging your community online to managing volunteers and teams, and of course funding advice from Karina. Some of us are Zoom natives by now, but I don't think all of us are. So let's just go through a few Zoom tips and tricks and some of the house rules to make sure we're all comfortable in this space. So if possible, if you're not eating your lunch, do try to have your camera on. We like to have the cameras on. It allows us to feel like we're in more of a community space. We can really see each other and connect. Your microphone will be automatically set off at the moment. Let us know in the chat box if you have any questions and if there's anything that you feel you need to voice. In terms of putting the camera on and off, if any of you don't know how, if you scroll down to the bottom of your screen, there'll be a little button that you can press that will stop or start your video. The chat box is going to be a useful space during this session. We're going to have plenty of opportunity for Q&A. Let's just give it a bit of a practice at this point, make sure we all know how to use it. I'm just going to open mine up. By putting into the chat box your name, the name of the community organisation you're affiliated with or engaged with, and where it is that you are zooming in from today. I am going to start off that trend by putting in the fact that I'm Lorna from Semble, and at the moment I am in Reading. So do share where you are at the moment. And while you're doing that, I will let you all know that we are recording the session this afternoon, and we'll be sending that recording out to all of you, as well as a copy of the slideshow that Corinna will share through this session. Now, if you're not comfortable appearing on the recording, absolutely fine to turn your camera off. Otherwise, as we said already, please do turn them on, as it does make a nice space to feel connected with other people, and acknowledge the fact that, you know, we're all working on community action projects, and we're all looking to get funding, and it's nice to come together as a group and think about that. So let's just have a quick look. We've got people in Lancashire, London. We have Celia and Rachel both in London, and Karen, Seoul in Kent, all sorts of places across the country, Hannah in Stockport, someone who is someone else in Kent. That's John from Kent. Really great to see everybody coming in from across the country. Network of Wellbeing, that's Flo from Cambridge. So one of the beautiful things about being on Zoom is really being able to gather like this from across the country. So I have a question for all of you before we get going, and I am going to launch a little poll right now to ask that. And while you are answering this question on income streams and where you get most of your income right now, it should be quite a quick response, so do that as soon as you can. While you're doing that, I am just going to give you a bit of an introduction to Corinna, the funding doctor, who will be taking today's session. So this is the third workshop that Corinna has done with Semble, Corinna, otherwise known as the funding doctor, has done one-on-one sessions for some of the Semble network too. And I'm really looking forward to learning more about different funding streams from Corinna this afternoon. Corinna has helped many community organisations and social enterprises to find funding. She's delivered workshops for us, but also for Village SOS, Big Lunch Extras, Eden Communities, Voluntary Sector Training, and others as well. Corinna works for the Big Lottery Fund and the EU Rural Development Funding Programme as well. She's an advisor for the Plunkett Foundation as well as the Hive. And maybe more importantly than anything else, she has personal experience of setting up community projects and small enterprises and getting sustainable funding. So in this session, Corinna is going to take us through a bit of a recap of the first workshop that we held in this particular series, which was Why Funders Fund, and then give a bit of an update on the current and ever-changing funding environment. We're then going to dive into the first 4 main pillars of sustainable funding. Then we'll be jumping into 3 additional pillars before having a kind of quick look at the communications implications of each of those approaches. That was quite a mouthful, communications implications. And then have a think about where to search for funding for free. And there's going to be plenty of kind of mini Q&A sessions as we go through. So while all of the juicy information is being shared, at the end of each of the main pillars of funding, we will stop for a kind of bite-sized Q&A. So as has been said, please do put any questions you have into the chat, and I will be pooling those and posing them to Corinna as we go through. So I think that's everything I need to cover. I'm just going to end the poll in one moment. So if any of you haven't responded to it, please do in the next 30 seconds or so. And I am going to hand over to Corinna to get us going.
Hi everyone. I'm just going to switch off my video just for a couple of seconds so that I can bring up my slides. But welcome to you all. Have a little drink and I pull up the slides. I see you in a second. Hello, here I'm back. Thank you for that. Can you all see a slide on the screen? And I also believe you can also see the poll results. Yeah, brilliant. Cool.
So I'm going to just pause the poll results now, but interesting to see those come through there.
Yeah, excellent. Okie doke. Just need to move this for a second. Sorry, this is all live, lovely people. Some of us have been on Zoom for a while and some of us are new. But anyway, thank you to the lovely Luna and the team at Semble to facilitate today's digital event. And hello to you all. My name is Corinna Hartwig and I'm also known as the funding doctor. And I brought along my beautiful coat for you, the funding doctor coat, which I have dusted off to share with you a bit of my expertise. For some of you is welcome back to all of you positive community activists, and I have met some of you already in the previous events. And if you're joining the series of workshops halfway through, welcome to you too. Today, I want to share with you in more detail my experience as both a volunteer for a successful community project that raised over £95,000, and in my roles as funding officer for the Big Lottery Fund and for a rural EU funding programme. I'm taking you on a deep dive into the depth of the funding spectrum to cool off from the summer's heat from a few days ago, and also to gain clarity where income can come from, as the waters can seem sometimes a bit murky and deep. So if I pulled off a successful community project, I know that you too can pull one off. I'm just going to move slide. So here's a brief overview that what I'm going to cover is just for those of you who arrived a little bit later, although Lorna briefly touched on it. I'm going to recap first of all from the previous workshop. Then I'm going to talk about the sustainable income spectrum with its 4 traditional pillars and 3 additional ones. Before talking about communications and marketing a little bit, and also to show you where you can search for funding, ideally for free. So we won't take you into breakout rooms today, but instead, as Lorna said, we will have mini Q&As dotted around to allow for me to grab a drink, but also for you to interact with us and ask the questions. And if you if you use the chat function for that, that will be really brilliant. So thank you very much. Perhaps towards the end, we can put on video, and if we have time, we'll really welcome some kind of live questions as well. But we'll have to see how we go with time, because I've got so much to share with you. Okay, so are you ready? Let's do a little recap from the previous workshops. Here we go. In the previous workshop, we established that we, the community groups and the funders, have 3 important drivers in common: the do good, look good, and feel good. When you do good in your community, it makes you feel good. And that's an experience that we need as human beings and that nourishes us. This good feeling also puts a smile on our faces, which in turn makes us look good. These 3 motivators are what you and the funders have in common, and that is really, really empowering. Funders also have areas of need for which they provide funding. There are broadly 9 different strategic areas. Obviously, the first one that I've depicted with the lovely coronavirus there is COVID. That obviously has touched all areas. Funders implemented as quickly as possible their programs as an emergency response, and COVID is still heavily influencing the funding environment, and we will look at this in more detail later. Another area of doing good, areas of need that is really important to funders, is at the moment food action, obviously. Also influenced by COVID. Then thirdly, environment, climate and green spaces. That includes garden parks, diversity and allotments, but also waste and resources, pollution, recycling, energy and the sharing economy. Fourth, health and well-being, which has been also heavily, or has heavily come to the forefront because of COVID. Mental health, physical health, loneliness and isolation, disabilities, sport. And actually we did a little poll in the previous workshop, and health and well-being was a cause that you care a lot about and seem to be doing a lot of work. So that's really good to see. Fifth is the economy, so sustaining jobs, employment and skills. 6 is the digital divide, which COVID has obviously changed the way we shop, interact and also fundraise. And it looks like this change is here to stay. 7 is equality, rights and social cohesion, which also has been brought to the forefront because of Black Lives Matters, and who was again in the news, sadly, in America last night. The 8th area of need is education and training that I don't necessarily have depicted on here, and also arts and culture, which includes music, cultural heritage and libraries, but we also know that there are areas that are very important to you, but also to the funders. As you can see, you and the funders have identified some of the same areas to do good, where things are not quite right in our society and where things could be better, and you have chosen to do something about it. If you want funding, your job is to find the right funder that has the same area of interest in common with you. We also looked at how the different strategic levels or strategies at different levels interact with your project that sits at the center of your community and at the center of your heart. But we also discovered that the funders, often too far away from the front line, need you to help him or her to do good. So this is powerful, and your job is to tell the funder how your project helps alleviate hardship and plays an important role in bringing on change that has been identified in a strategy. And the ripple effect, as I call it, goes both ways. Strategies influence your project, but your project has also the power to influence strategies or to do good with greater impact. We were really busy in the last workshop. We also discovered that the outcome pyramid as a useful tool to break down all the different parts of our project that together make up a strong case for funding. Now, most funders fund outcomes and not activities, and that was something that we talked through and most of you managed to discover. It's really important that you make sure that you work through all these elements of the pyramid if you are serious about attracting funding. You will also need to make sure that your project outcomes are aligned with those of your chosen funder. These need to match, or you have to choose, or you have chosen the wrong funder. So make sure that the outcomes are aligned. That's really, really important. Finally, we kind of looked at the funding environment and how it impacts us today when we're looking for funding. So obviously, again, COVID-19, the pandemic, it looks now to stay with us for much longer than anticipated, and funders are still adapting to this too. So keep checking all free funding search tools that you have available to check for updates. If you are new to the world of fundraising, I will explain a little bit later in the session where to search for funding opportunities. The need, which is represented in the middle picture in the top row, we all need that. The need is huge. And with the UK now officially in a recession, we know it will keep growing. So what you're doing is absolutely needed. The third is the funding environment is the digital shift. Today in the sector, we're doing things digitally that we didn't think possible just a few months ago. We're running around, coordinating, giving support whilst being physically apart. We work remotely, but still in a team. We're embracing remote learning through webinars like this one today to support and unite us. We're organizing virtual pubs and pub quizzes and other digital fundraisers. We're collecting cashless donations via apps. And we're communicating even more via social media, email, and other electronic means. Who would have thought this possible just 4 months ago? This means that the way we fundraise, communicate, and access funding has been influenced by this rapid digital transformation, and it's here to stay. In addition, the space is crowded and funding is now even more competitive. There's the equivalent to one registered voluntary organization for about every 400 people, and that actually has gone up. So that means there is more registered voluntary organizations popping up. So perhaps it's time for you to think about getting together with another similar group or organization, pool your energy and join resources and look for funding together so that you can do more good together. This way, it's also easier to show greater impact to the funders and stand a better chance of attracting funding. Together with Semble, we want to invite you to continue to be creative and resourceful, because we really know that's what you're really good at. And you have just proven it in the last few months, and you can do it again, because you're not alone. The Semble team and I are here to help and support you with this workshop, the next one, and all the other resources that you can look up on the website. So that brings me to the end of my little recap from last time. Please feel free to watch any missed workshops on the Semble website. But now let's move on to today's topic, and I would like to start by telling you a little story. This story is the one of a jam jar. The real life jam jar represents the sustainable income spectrum, and it is a real life jam jar that was used initially to collect coppers as part of my community project that I was involved in my village. It was a playground open space project with just a handful of volunteers. It is now my favorite analogy of a successful funding strategy, which is based on a wide variety of income sources that contributed to raising all the funds that were needed to implement the ambitious project of £95,000. We had donations in cash, we organized fundraising events, quizzes, and we face painted until our fingers were numb. We filled in grant applications, and we also had huge disappointments, but also successes. After about 3 years of serious fundraising, we had we were still a third of our total project short. And we needed to find another £25,000 in cash, but we couldn't just get them in money. So in a desperate attempt to buy time to recover from a massive failed grant application and to allow us to think about plan B, we distributed the jam jars in all the shops and outlets of our high street. We hoped to collect a bit of cash, but we also asked for help. And that's when a construction company that was just based outside of our village contacted us, as they were looking for a community project to get involved in as part of their corporate social responsibility agenda. And because we had asked for help through all of our communication channels, because we knew exactly what we needed and what difference we wanted to make, they came on board and provided us with tools, machinery, security fencing and containers, manpower and skills to put the equipment in the ground. Without the funding mix, our project would have never been realized. So let me take you through the sustainable income spectrum that I have adapted from the NCVO in the next few slides, and I will explain the different income streams one by one, because it is really important that you do not become dependent on any one income stream, because you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. Just a bit of fun. The first thing you need to do when you're thinking about seriously about funding is to establish your total project costs. Today, we don't have enough time to create such a budget, but please join us on the 15th of September at 5 o'clock at the next workshop, when we will show you how to create a project budget from scratch and on a shoestring. So back to the income stream. So you establish the amount you will need first. Perhaps a few of you can share in the chat function how much you're looking to raise, if you know how much that is. That would be quite good. But in our case, it was about £95,000. But projects vary in sizes. Plenty are much smaller and other loads more ambitious. I will carry on, but we'll have a look at how much in general you kind of looking to fund in a minute. So when I'm out and about in my wonderful funding doctor coat, people often ask me, Corinna, can you help me to find some funding? And most of the time they mean grant funding, or getting funding from trusts or foundations. And as you took part in the little poll we did right at the beginning, it was quite clear that for most of you that have come into the workshop today, that's the funding you're probably thinking about as well. How can I attract grant funding? Now, this income stream is only one out of the 4 traditional pillars of the sustainable funding income spectrum. For this particular stream, you apply for grant funding from a funder. Funders are very often distributing public funds, or they distribute them on behalf of philanthropists, people who want to do good or might want to leave a legacy through trusts and foundations. So how does it work for those of you who are new to this world? For grant funding, the funders publicize their funding programs to alleviate hardship in certain areas. You have to apply by a certain deadline generally, and you will need to be what I call be fit for funding. By that I mean you will need to fulfill a certain criteria, and it is essential that you read the guidance notes before you apply. If you are in doubt if this funding is for you, call the helpline and speak to the funder. Your project outcomes need to be aligned with the outcomes that the funders fund. That is really, really important. You will also need to have your house in order. And in some cases, if you're not a registered charity with your own bank account, you won't qualify. Applying for grant funding often involves filling in forms and writing lengthy grant applications. The more money you're applying for, the more thorough the process is, and that's as simple as that. If you're thinking about applying for funding from trusts and foundations, the application process can be similar to the one from grant funding, but can also vary. And sometimes it's more like a matter of sending in a letter, actually. So some have deadlines, some don't, and sometimes the decision making can take some time, as these funds are often administered by solicitors. In either case, we discussed how important it is that your project fits with your chosen funder. If you need to refresh on the subject, or if you missed it, just rewatch workshop 1. It is also recommended that you have a well thought through project plan, and ideally you can demonstrate that you have delivered similar projects before. So really run some pilots to test out your ideas and to establish that there is a clear need. Use the outcome triangle from workshop 1 to help you with this. If you're lucky and your bid was successful, you will be issued a grant funding agreement that is a legally binding document in most cases. Very often, grant funding can only be used for the stated outcomes and for that specific project, for nothing else. And you will need to report back to the funder at regular intervals, and we discussed how you can measure your outcomes and your impact in the first workshop. You have funders that sit at different strategic levels, some who fund big projects and some who will fund smaller ones, which I will now explain in the next couple of slides. Broadly speaking, grant funders fund these areas of need, and generally they like to fund new projects and capital costs. The areas are, broadly speaking, active communities, mental health, environment and climate change, food, jobs and skills, inclusive communities. Now, of course, because of the crisis, some areas have been accentuated and accelerated. For example, more digital, the digital divide, food, mental and physical health, and of course also BAME, BAME have come to the forefront. Traditionally, also, here's an overview of some well-known funders that would have been the go-to ones for you to apply to. However, COVID-19 has immensely disrupted grant making, and many of the main grant funders had to halt funding programs. And I'm just going to give you a few examples here. For example, the National Lottery Community Fund has closed its funds. The website says government allocation of funding to the Coronavirus Community Support Fund, the CCSF, has now closed due to new applications. We are prioritizing the assessing and rewarding of funding to the organizations that have already applied for this funding. We will prioritize organizations supporting people and communities who experience disproportionate challenge and difficulty as a result of COVID-19. There will be a continuation of a high demand for our funding, and we're doing everything we can, but unfortunately we have to make some difficult choices. That's what the Big Lottery Fund's saying. Esme Fairbairn Foundation also, from April the 3rd, we are closed now to new applications from organizations we don't already fund. That's because they want to prepare for a new strategy and work closely with organizations that we already fund to support them through the crisis. Comic Relief, that traditionally raised money from the public and is spent to help poor and disadvantaged people in the UK and in the world's poorest communities, is funding only existing organizations as well at the moment. Now on my slide, you also see the European flag. That's a little bit of good news there. There is still some money to be had from the European Union, but you must be quick. The ESIF, the ESIF programs will continue to invest in projects after the 31st of December 2020, but all funding must be finished by the end of 2023. If you're interested in EU funding, that's often quite complicated, lengthy applications, and you'll have to jump through a lot of hoops, but it can be done. But it's best suited for established organizations and social enterprises, it's not for individuals. I put up an image also of, with the butterfly on, which is a resource which is the guide to the new trusts, which you can find at the Directory of Social Change. And basically it's a guide to all the trusts and foundations in the UK. We can share a link with you a little bit later on or in the follow-up if you wanted to have a look at that guide. It used to be available in the libraries. It might still be available. Have a look. Whether the libraries have it digitally, I haven't had a chance to look for it yet, but it's a good resource. So obviously what emerges from the crisis is a need to bridge the digital gap from the third sector. For example, Esme Fairbairn, Paul Hamlin Foundation, Comic Relief and the Community Fund have come together to provide charities with access to experts to help them with the digital transition accelerated by the crisis. So you can check out Catalyst here that has now kind of appeared hopefully on your screens. Catalyst provides funding that is aimed at organizations whose work has been affected by COVID-19 and who need emergency funding to continue to deliver essential services. It will support them to develop the digital data and design capabilities that allow them to address urgent issues and serve the most vulnerable. And the funding there is a combination of direct grants and payment for support from digital agencies, so they will give you access to paid for support. The power of change, which is also there on your slide, has suspended all funding at the moment, but there will be more coming. Another one that has something available at the moment is coming in now is the Social Enterprise Support Fund. If you're a social enterprise and generating income mainly from trading with the intention to support BAMI, you might be eligible. And we'll sharing the links, or maybe Luna can share the link to the Social Enterprise Support Fund.org.uk. Specialist small and medium voluntary groups supporting migrant and refugees can consider applying to the Barrow Cadbury Trust, the COVID-19 Support Fund, which has an extended deadline and the criteria updated. And there is no deadline for applications, but the program will close once enough applications are received to ensure the funds are spent. So this is just a very brief overview of the main ones, because there is so much change at the moment. So it's really important that you keep an eye on what's happening in terms of national grants. And I just want to introduce you a little bit to regional funders now, because the chances of attracting grant funding for you are greater if you look for regional funders, as there is obviously a more hyperlocal funding available possibly now, because there is such a difference in the local needs. So speak to your ward councillors or district and county councillors, get in touch with them and see what's available. The Henry Smith Foundation works more at regional level, for example, around projects that address social inequalities and economic disadvantage. However, they have to suspend their programs at the moment, but keep an eye. For Tesco's Bags of Help, they are mainly supporting now vulnerable groups, and you can try to apply for £500. And you have to show that the need for your services has been disrupted and that you have an increased demand. So you can see how that all changes, but that's available to anyone. So there's Tesco's Bags of Help. Another funding stream traditionally, and that's something to kind of bear in mind, is also the SEAL, the Community Infrastructure Levy. Let me explain a little bit to you what that is. It came into force in April 2010, and it allows local authorities in England and Wales to raise funds from developers undertaking new building projects in the area. The money can be used to fund a wide range of infrastructure that is needed as a result of development. This includes new or safer road schemes, flood defences, schools, hospitals, or other health and social care facilities, park improvements, green spaces, and leisure centres. Again, please speak to your local authority on how to access the SEAL. I'm going to kind of just show you, I just wanted to say that looking for the right funding takes time and skills, and you need to make sure that you have both available. And of course, I will tell you where you can search for funding for free a little bit later this afternoon. So attracting income through grant funding for new projects is highly competitive, and most funders are oversubscribed. Many funders now concentrating on crisis funding, so think carefully before investing your time and energy. It's also important for you to know that even before the crisis, there were less and less grant funders willing to award cash for new projects. Most of our specialists support boot camps and training instead of cash. For those still offering cash, you're likely to be asked to provide much funding. This means that you will need to have already secured a proportion in cash, and your project will need to be ready to go. Phew, so we only discussed one pillar of the income stream, but I would like to answer a few of your questions before we look at the other 6 options.
And before we jump into those questions, I'm just going to report back that around the kind of total amounts that people are fundraising for, somebody responded with 20,000, and then a couple of others are looking for 100K. So substantial amounts, a lot of high impact, I'm sure, happening across there. And we have had one question which is more posed to the group in general, but if anyone has any questions around grants, please put them into the group chat as soon as you can. We've got a couple of minutes here, so we'll be happy to answer any of those. Just get tapping away. And for now, just to say that David from Wheelie Tots has just put into the chat about the fact that they are looking for kind of funding in partnership opportunities, and that they're based in North London and are looking for other organisations to partner with. So do scroll up in the chat or get in touch with David through the chat directly if you think that might work for your organisation organisation. Otherwise, if nobody has any particular questions around grants, oh, it looks like we might have just had one. Any suggestions for finding funding for ongoing projects with no start or end dates? As most funders seem to want to support new projects, and most don't fund staff costs. So any suggestions on that, Corinna?
I think I will show you where to search for funding later, and the trick is to identify some funders who are now obviously responding to the crisis. So I guess the question back to you who asked the question would be, is it related, is your project that's ongoing related to the COVID crisis, or has it maybe, did you have to adapt because of COVID? And there you might be able to find grant funders, but generally grant funders want to fund new projects and are refraining from funding revenue costs. However, funders have started to adapt and change because of the crisis, and they're here to support you all as well. So keep an eye and do some search. So there might be some out there, but without knowing any more details, it's a little bit difficult to say. So hopefully that answers your question. I know no magic wand, I'm afraid, but I show you where to search for free, and hopefully you'll find. Shall I carry on?
Yeah, well, actually, let's just have this one.
Yeah, sure.
A little bit of future gazing.
Yeah.
Just to say, do you have any sense of the emerging trends? At the moment, obviously, a lot of the funding opportunities out there are responding to coronavirus.
Yeah.
But do you have any sense of where that might go?
Yes. It is definitely more and more funding is becoming available to help you to bridge the digital divide, and I will talk about that a little bit as well. Because traditionally some of the kind of third sector organizations have been kind of rattling, if you like, the donation buckets, and now have to do that digitally, really. But obviously there's a lot around the ethnic minorities as well, communities in real need, which is not a new trend per se, but it has kind of changed, that it is really the BAMI mainly that the funders at the moment want to support, or organizations that help with BAMI, but also around mental health and well-being, especially as we're going forward into autumn and winter, and we don't quite know what the pandemic still has for us in store. And there is also a bit of a change in, I would say, in arts and culture as well, because obviously that's been really, really hard hit by the crisis as well. Many venues not being able to open. So there is hopefully more funding coming. There has been some funding released, but hopefully more funding coming. But again, funders want to see you doing something different, to embrace new ways of working, and that you're really reaching to the hardest to reach, to the communities who are really most in need. So that is really important for you to understand. I hope that makes sense.
Great, thank you so much. And we might keep the next session extra quick on Q&A. We're getting kind of through our time already.
Yeah, we are.
Gone through one pillar, so let's keep going.
Okay. So come to the second pillar, which is most obvious income stream for voluntary community organizations and small charities in the form of donations. A donation is any gift given to your organization voluntarily and not in exchange for any goods or services. So before the coronavirus crisis, most of you were collecting these in person and in cash through collection boxes, buckets, and through events. You can receive gifts from individuals or from the private sector, for example, in the form of corporate social responsibility, on which I touched a little bit earlier on, and which contributed a whopping third of our total project costs. We access the donations in kind, free use of equipment, resources, manpower, and expertise. But because of the pandemic, you will need to transpose the real life jam jar into an electronic digital one. And due to the current social distancing, you need to collect your donations electronically. So let's have a little look how you can do that. So examples are micro donations, and they are often becoming more and more hyper-local via Just Giving, CAF Donate, Pennies or Givies, which are actually applications, and I represented some of their logos on the slide. Don't forget the donation buttons, and please don't forget to have them on your website. You can use them on Eventbrite, you can use them on PayPal, you can use them in social media. Don't forget to use them. That's how you're going to collect your donations now. Obviously, traditionally raffles and quiz nights, they had to be moved online, but you embraced that already, so you have to carry on doing that. Obviously, your real life events have been also transformed by Captain Tom, the London Marathon, the Ice Bucket Challenge, who have showed us that, the Garden Triathlon, and gaming. So be creative and have a little look what the big charities are doing. Because a lot of them have actually embraced gaming as well, believe it or not. Then don't forget affiliate shopping, which is really important for the smaller ones. For example, the Giving Machine or Easy Fundraising is where a donation is made by purchasing goods or services through this application. So the person buying their goods or services, for example, from M&S through the app, purchase them in a normal way, but there will be a donation made to your organization. Don't forget volunteer time, expert volunteers. Lots of fundraisers of bigger charities have been furloughed. Obviously, some of them are coming back. Some of them might not come back. So get hold of them and use their expertise in volunteering. Don't forget gift aid, which I've got on there as well. Gift aid increases the value of donations by 25%. So it means even more money goes to the causes you care about, and it won't cost you anything extra. And as we're entering another phase of the pandemic, it's most likely that online donations are here to stay. Therefore, it's really important that you embrace the digital transformation as quickly as possible. Otherwise, the donations that were meant for you will go elsewhere, and we don't want that. So if you're yet to take the leap, don't be afraid. You are not the only ones. There are schemes that can help you support you in transitioning, such as Digital Candle. And did I put Digital Candle on that slide? No, I haven't, but I will talk about it a little bit later on. So let's move on to the third option on the income spectrum, which still involves asking. And I hope you have noticed that we have been very much on the left-hand side of the arrow that you can see underneath the boxes, which means that for donations, you're 100% asking, you say, please, please, please fund me because I've got a good cause and I'm doing some good. And another way of asking for donations online these days is obviously crowdfunding, and through crowdfunding platforms such as Crowdfunder, for example. Whilst I'm pulling up the next slide, maybe a few of us can give us a show of hands or wave if you have your video on, to say if you have already used a bit of crowdfunding. But for crowdfunding to work, you first need a crowd of supporters or an audience, ideally across a few social media profiles that you can use as amplifiers. And of course, you also need a compelling story that is best told in a video. So there's different crowdfunding models. I just want to really go through them very, very quickly, because there is other specialists specializing in crowdfunding models, and I just want to show you a few platforms. But there is crowdfunding models is basically equity-based, reward-based, where you give away a little gift. Lender-based, that's for example peer-to-peer lending, or the crowd lends you some money and is repaid with interest. or there is donation-based, which I touched on in the previous slide. So let's have a little look at what platforms are out there. So Crowdfunder is one of the very popular ones, and who offers crowdfunding across different of those areas. Just Giving, GoFundMe. Most of them also have now free webinars and on demand for you to watch. So crowdfunding can also work to help you create a buzz, but it's not a quick fix generally. It really requires careful planning, time and energy. And the crowdfunding place generally is also crowded, literally. So you need to make sure that your project stands out there too. I wanted also at this point say a quick word about social media platforms. Obviously, platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram need to be central now to your marketing and communications. And a recent published survey by the charity Comms and the Media Trust that was published in April found that Facebook was used by the vast majority of charities as an essential communication channel during the COVID-19 pandemic, and actually nearly 85% of charities used Facebook as a communications tool. So clever use of text, video, images, and private messaging on social media can significantly boost a specific fundraising campaign or help communicate with your beneficiaries, as well to mobilize volunteers. It's a must now, you can't avoid it. A very quick pit stop for some Q&As, Lorna, if there is any.
Yeah, I think we do have something in here, which is from Louise Shepherd, who is asking about whether a CIC can access gift aid. I believe that Louise is asking for her forest school CIC.
Oh, that's a very good question, and I should know the answer, but I will have to look it up to make sure that it is absolutely correct. So we will get back to you, Louise, if that's okay.
And I think therefore we're ready to go on.
Okay.
We will, answer any unanswered questions in the follow-up email that we'll be sending out with the recording and the slides and plenty of links to answer the questions coming through about whether those will be provided.
Brilliant, thank you, Lorna, for that. Now, with the slide that I've just pulled up now, can you see we were very much with grant funding, donations and crowdfunding, we were really asking to be funded. Now I'd like to take you along the arrow that sits underneath the kind of main pillars to the right hand side, which is 100% earning. So 100% earning by trading, that means a customer or a purchaser comes and buys something from you. And that could be B2C, so business to customer, or business to business. So let me explain. So income generated through trading goods or services on the open market, how it's also called, can be a valuable source of unrestricted independent income and a real contribution to supporting organizational independence and growth. However, obviously, due to the pandemic, you need to be mindful of the economic downturn and aware that buying goods and services has gone hyper-local or online. So let's think about the arrow underneath. We are now 100% earning, which means that your language and the way you communicate and conduct yourselves is totally different, more business-like. You are offering a service and goods instead of kind of pleading to be supported. And if you want to include this income stream, make sure that you're feeling comfortable and that you have members in the team who have the skills to navigate this world. Here are a few examples of what you can sell. Obviously products and produce, and we talked about that this has to be or hyperlocal or go online. The same goes for selling goods and services. You could think about membership fees. You could think about repair services for goods or IT or maintenance. You could think about alterations. You could think about generating revenue through running courses, through selling how-to guides, through training and mentoring, giving talks, through consultancy, feasibility studies, or research work. So since the pandemic, and according to a research of the British Heart Foundation, charity shops have become even more important, and they're getting the support from the public. Of course, they have been badly hit by the pandemic on the lockdown, but the good news is that according to this research, the younger consumers are now more likely to increase their visits to charity shops, with nearly 20% of the respondents aged 25 to 34 reporting they would be more likely to shop in charity shops after the pandemic than before, and compared to just 6% of respondents aged 55 and above. So I think that's really important as well. If traditionally before the pandemic, your kind of consumers were mainly aged 55 and above, there is a likelihood that about 20% of those now are 25 to 34. So they've become very young all of a sudden, which is lovely. But no, what I mean is that you maybe need to see, to attract the younger generation and to retain them, that means that they're coming and shopping from you more often, you might need to adjust your offering. And don't forget that these young people are also used to order digitally, to buy digitally, so make sure that you catch them online too. So sales on the open market is traditionally the third part of the sustainable income spectrum that we have now discussed. I would like to kind of introduce you to the very last of the pillars. Oh, sorry, I just go back one moment, just to kind of tag on a little bit more around online shopping. So it might be a good idea also for you to look up Shopify, which allows you to have shops online, but also for small charities and organizations, voluntary organizations, there is a platform called jumblebee.co.uk that you can also use with a pop-up shop. So please go and explore them, which allows you just to try the digital shopping world a little bit. So now I'm moving forward to the last of the traditional pillars according to the NCVO, and that's the one that is called the structured market, and that encapsulates the contracts and the purchaser buys from there. It's a way to generate income basically by delivering contracts. Let me explain what I mean. So procurement, for example, is the purchase of goods and services from an external agencies, and local authorities will have procurement offices and procurement portals, and I've represented one of those portals there. That's the procurement portal of Essex. And you should have a procurement portal for wherever you are, so have a look there. You can sign up for them normally absolutely for free, but you might need to find the link or ring the procurement office and ask them, so that you have an idea what's available. And contracting is the process of entering into a legal agreement with the purchaser to provide goods and services. So that could be the handshake really, or signing on the dotted line. So for example, you could be contracted by a local brewery to make face masks because they want to bring out their workforce from furlough and require face masks, for example. So Example of contracts that are available are from, for example, from the local CCG, so the Care Commissioning Group, especially around recovery from illness, drugs, ex-offenders, and obviously now also health and well-being, including mental health, recycling schemes, apprenticeships, maintenance and mending contracts with private firms or local authorities as well, making items that are needed, and I said that before, for example, like the face masks. Also, to successfully secure or deliver a contract, you will need to be contract ready. So watch out for webinars on contracting and procurement from your local CVS or your voluntary action group. There are also contracts available to deliver much needed services around health and well-being. Take a look or Google social prescribing to find out more if that's for you. This is very topical at the moment, and there are opportunities for those of you who are in the arts and culture too. You will be required to demonstrate social value, and some regions are opening up the contracts to more and more social enterprises or charities that have a trading arm. So this income stream is really interesting because it allows you to secure funding normally for a few years, which means that you can plan much better. You become much more sustainable and won't need to waste so much energy on firefighting, fundraising, which can be really draining, and it allows you to kind of fund also your revenue costs. Again, it requires a certain skill set and a contract readiness to which you will need to gear up to if you want a piece of this pie. And since the last economic crisis of 2007 and 2008, the government has shifted a lot of funding from the funding stream grants to the funding stream now of the structured market. And that's also something that you need to be aware of, that the long-term effects of COVID-19 with regards to income streams is obviously yet unknown, but it's very important that you keep up and stay informed at all times. So definitely do some horizon screening in terms of contracting and procurement. Very, very important. A quick mini Q&A if there's any burning questions right now.
I don't think there are, not at the moment. We're an hour through, so we've got kind of half an hour to touch on some of those additional funding pillars. One thing that I will just add, while Corinna has probably much needed sip of tea, having so generously provided us with so much information already, that the National Academy for Social Prescribing has recently been awarded $5 million as part of the government's move to support people to stay connected and healthy and support well-being following the pandemic. So that is it's a good one to look into, and just echoing that from Corinna. So one question here, can smaller organisations be successful in procurement? Would you advise, Corinna, that smaller organisations go into kind of procurement contracts?
You will have to jump through a certain amount of hoops. So the best thing that you maybe should do first is maybe speak to your local CVS or your community action support and run it through with them. Let's say it's a bit trickier going it on your own, but maybe they can put you in touch with other similar organizations, and together you can actually go for procurement, or maybe sometimes under the umbrella of a bigger one, because there will be kind of contract ready already. And then it's a little bit easier. But sometimes what is a good tip also is to understand who actually secures some contracts, and see if you can come as a delivery partner or even as a delivery partner full stop at grassroots level, because again, it's probably the slightly bigger organizations who are awarded those contracts, but they need you grassroots, smaller organizations to really deliver on the ground. So I hope that makes a bit of sense. Generally, it's tricky to go alone if you're new, if you're small. but go it together and maybe under the umbrella of someone a bit more experienced, or do some horizon screening and tag on to deliver some of the services that have been contracted. I hope that makes sense.
That sounds great, thank you. And there's thanks coming in from Hannah, who asked the question as well. Great advice.
You're welcome, Hannah.
So let's jump into some of those additional pillars.
Okay. So we kind of discussed now the 4 main ones, and we understand asking and earning, and now I'm kind of coming to a second kind of additional one that's very often not considered, is the one of loans, and the lender obviously provides the funding here. So of course you can also think about borrowing money, especially if you are more the enterprising type, and sometimes this type of income can allow you to be truly independent and creative, as you are free to spend the money as you wish once you have secured a loan. This is particularly interesting if you're thinking about investing in capital. For example, if you need to raise funding for renovation costs, or if you want to buy an asset for the community, so you need true investment to grow. Or if you're upgrading to newer technologies, for example. Yes, and maybe you have also already a community asset as a collateral, and you have really good social and a really good social enterprise business plan is obviously important, because the lender will want to see that you can repay the loan and the interest rates. So here it's really important to kind of put your kind of entrepreneurial business hat on, to show that you mean business and that you have a thought through business plan with a projection of income that allows you to repay the loans. Loans might also be interesting at the moment if you need help with cash flow. So a short-term loan, or if you're juggling operating costs at the moment. So a loan could help you, especially if you're affected by the pandemic. And I will just show you in the next slide a few social lenders that specialize in that. Obviously speak to your bank that you're banking with at the moment if you need maybe an overdraft to juggling cash flow. But if you're thinking about attracting into securing a long-term loan, here is a few social lenders examples that I have pulled up for you. Most of them come together under the umbrella of Big Society Capital. And you can find them all on the Good Finance website. That's the top logo I put up there. But just a few examples of individual banks, for example, a charity bank, Triodos Bank, the cooperative and community finance. Loans that you might be able to access if your business has been interrupted by COVID-19. Some of those banks also now deliver the Resilience and Recovery Loan Fund that you might have heard of, or the bounce back loan schemes as well. So have a look at the Good Finance portal, which also has a free-to-use diagnostic tool for you to use to see if borrowing money is the right thing for you. They have also a very, very good comprehensive COVID-19 resource hub for charities and social enterprises. And obviously to look for a loan, you have to be a social enterprise or a charity with a trading arm, ideally with a business plan in place. And don't forget that some of the crowdfunding platforms can help you to access loan funds as well. So there are a number of peer-to-peer lending and crowdfunding platforms that you can use. There are 3 platforms that focus on social investment opportunities for charities and social enterprises, and they are Crowdfunder, Ethics, and Community Chest. So we come, hooray, to the last option in the sustainable income spectrum, which is basically raising capital through a share offer. Ooh, any of you thought about a share offer? So if your legal model allows it and you think it's right for your organization, you could set up a community share offer. Let me explain how it works. I'm going to read you a little definition from communityshares.org.uk for that. The term community shares refers to withdrawable share capital, which is a form of share capital unique to cooperatives or community benefit society legislation. This type of share capital can only be issued to cooperative societies, community benefit societies, and charitable community benefit societies. Investing in community shares engages communities in a virtuous circle where it is in their interest as members and investors to also be active as customers, supporters, and volunteers. And the same applies to other stakeholders, including employees and suppliers, giving them new meaning to the term multi-stakeholder, where the same person engages with the enterprise through a multiplicity of stakeholder roles. So community shares can really be a good option, for example, for buying community buildings, especially for heritage, for community shops and community pubs, community woodlands and parks, pools and lidos, community transport, sport and recreation and renewable energies, but also for children's nurseries. Now there's a thought. Here a few support organizations. The Community Shares Unit that you can find at communityshares.org.uk offers advice and support because they're a little bit more technical. You can also get support, including access to a business advisor through the Hive. And if you are in rural locations and you're into community pubs and community shops, the Plunkett Foundation can really help you to help you on your way to run your own community pub or community shop. You can also use crowdfunding platforms to issue your community shares, and for example, Crowdfunder is very often used for that. So if we have time now, I'm happy to take a few more questions relating to loans and community shares before showing briefly how the income streams really influence your marketing and communication, and finally showing you where to search for funding. Have we got any questions coming in, Lorna?
None right now. Oh, I was wrong about that. So just one here on shares. Doesn't having shares impact who will fund? Or does that not count for community shares?
Sorry, say that again.
The question is, does having shares, community shares, impact who else might give you funding? Or does that not count?
No, you can use it for match funding as well, and it's really part of your sustainable income stream. So ideally, you really, let me just bring up actually the next slide. Ideally, you really want to have incomes coming in from the greatest variety of those income streams that I introduced to you as possible in order to be truly sustainable. And for example, a community shop that I help with near Aylesbury, they had a community share offer because they needed to actually build a completely new community shop, and they appealed to their community and they raised a substantial amount in community shares, but that was still not enough. They also secured a European funding, grant funding stream to actually help them with building their building, to purchase the building. And they had also donations from local philanthropists, if you want, especially at the beginning for the all-important seed funding. And what they're also doing, any income that they're generating through trading in the cafe, in the shop, any surplus, is then donated, is then kind of reused in the community to do more good. So because of that, for example, they actually managed to revamp their kind of playground as well. So can you see how the whole scheme comes together really, really nicely if you plan for that? And actually, that's an interesting question, because planning for a fundraising strategy is what we're doing in the last of the series of the 3 workshops. So come mid-September and join us, and we will discuss that more in detail. I hope that answered your question.
That's great. Thank you so much, Corinna. And we have kind of 5 minutes, 10 minutes max to go through the last part of this.
Yep.
Yeah, looking forward to gleaning those last bits of information from you.
Okay. So now you have discovered that there are actually much more income streams that you maybe or hopefully have thought of, and I really invite you to explore some of those. Some might be suitable for you, others might not, but that's fine as long as you know that they're there, and maybe as you grow they will become available to you. But what I'd like us to discuss now is really the difference between kind of asking, so please fund me, to do we have a deal, shake my hand, in terms of your marketing and communications, and but also in your kind of skills. But also I'd like to invite you to think about what is the stuff that you as an organization are really made of. What type are you? Are you the type who says, please fund us because we're doing so much good? Or are you the type who means business and say, I'm offering this social value, and therefore come and buy my goods and services? So you have to ask yourself as an organization or as a group, who are we truly deep down to ourselves, because it will influence how well you're doing with the different income streams. But if you discover that you are maybe not so much a type that is kind of happy to earn 100% and selling goods, for example, online right now, well, perhaps that's where you need to plug the skills gap and see, is there any volunteer that has experience in online selling that you can involve and bring on board, so that you really kind of draw on that income stream as well, at least a certain percentage? Because the more you spread across the income stream, the more sustainable you will be, and the less dependable on any one source you will be, which just allows you to sleep a little bit better at night, really. Now, let me talk a little bit more to show you how important digital has become for your communications and marketing now, really. So according to a research from Charity Comms and the Media Trust, the comms channels that charities are using the most during this period of isolation and remote working are emails, Facebook, website, and Twitter. So more than half of the 119 respondents that they asked a few months back intend to use all 4 of those channels combined to connect with stakeholders. And of course, and in addition, you have a means like Zoom that we're using today, MS Team, Vimeo for your videos, and so forth. What I would say, don't ignore still the emails, and don't ignore your website, and really make sure that your website is up to scratch, because your website is now your shop window, whether that's your portfolio of the good things you're doing, or whether it's to sell your goods and services. But it really is worth revisiting your website and making sure it stands out. And again, here, Digital Candle can help you with. Digital Candle gives you access for an hour to a digital expert that can help you with your website, with your marketing and communications. I'm just trying to, what else? yeah, so all aspects of digital marketing, from digital strategy and skills to Google Ads and social media. And that's kind of, Digital Candle sits under Catalyst that I kind of mentioned to you before. On this slide also, there should be, yeah, the Fat Beehive Foundation is a foundation that provides small grants to small UK registered charities towards the cost of website and digital products. So their aim is to help organizations carry out their work in a more efficient and effective way, resulting in positive social benefit. And a couple of organizations that can help you further is also the Media Trust, and I've put their logo up there. Whether you're completely new to marketing and communications or want to take your skills to the next level, they have free guides, toolkits, blogs and tips that are designed to help you to enhance your knowledge, stay informed about trends and developments, and gain advice from a range of communication experts. So it's well worth having a look at. So it's obviously quite clear that you will need to get a lot more social media marketing savvy and use websites much more. And again, if that's something where you think, oh, I'm not sure if we have the skills right now, perhaps have a look if you can kind of advertise this as a voluntary role, get volunteers on board. And it's often the younger generation. Some of them are still furloughed, or some of them might also lose work, which is obviously sad, but have the skills and they might come on board and help you. And it's a really nice way to kind of not only bridge the digital, but also maybe bridge an age divide. So but you need to embrace it. You need to embrace digital. It's not going to go away, and it's truly feasible. And I'm also volunteering for Digital Candle, so you might even get me. Who knows? So very quickly now, I'd like to show you where you can search for funding for free. There's payable tools, but I want to show you where you can search for free before we have a few minutes for our final Q&A at the end. So here are your funding searches. The CAF, the Charities Aid Foundation, have a fantastic resource. Funding Central is absolutely free. The under Funding Central also sits the know-how, which is a fantastic tool and is now free to access for all organizations, so third sector organizations from all shapes and sizes. Don't forget, on the .gov.uk website, you can also search if you're more social enterprise, and if you're interested in some of the government funding. Grant Finder and GrantNet can often be accessed through your local authority website, so have a look. And please don't forget to also look at the procurement portals, which are often free to sign up for, or should be free for you to sign up for, so that you get a little bit of an insight. So other support that you can get, some of them I already mentioned. The Institute of Fundraising is fantastic. LinkedIn groups, don't forget those. Associations, for example, here I've put the Men's Sheds Association on there. If you are providing sheds, Digital Charity Lab is really good. Charity Digital. Yeah, your CVSs, and of course Semble. Semble has a lot of resources on their website, constantly updated, and that's where you will find also recording of today's webinar, because I had to speak rather fast, and I had to fill you in with a lot of information. So yeah, and of course the NCVO, on which the Sustainable Funding Spectrum tool is based. Go on and have a look there. So that's it from me for now. I will, before we go into last final Q&A, I just wanted to say thank you very quickly. Do good, look good and feel good. And I hope you haven't fallen asleep after lunch. And I will stop sharing my slides now and I come and join you in the main room in the video. Here I am.
Thank you so much, Corinna. A time to take a bit of a breather for you, I think. Get your breath back. That was a lot that you shared there. And just to repeat the fact that we will be sharing all of the information, the recording, the links, the slides through an email after this session, but we do have a little bit more because there are some questions still and we'd like to get those answered before saying our thanks. Sure. So if you have any questions to ask, pop them in the chat. They could cover anything across the funding spectrum that we've just heard about, anything from the donating to shares and loans, procurement, whatever it is that you might want to ask Corinna about. So we do have one question in here that I think I might be able to answer, having heard you speak, Corinna. The question is about having a kind of combination of different types of funding. So you mentioned that you have to kind of decide what kind of an organization you are. Do you mean business, or do you want to ask for donations? Is it okay to be a bit of both? Or would you suggest focusing on one?
I think it's important that you a little bit of both, but that you really listen to you as an organization, where you sit, and really do more of what you're good at doing, because only then you're staying true to yourselves, and that will come across in the way you tell your story, in the way you asking the funder for support. And you know, there is obviously a difference if you're more entrepreneurial, or if you are really doing good without having the additional entrepreneurial aspects attached to it. So don't spread yourselves too thin, but if you, let's say, more on the 100% asking side of things, make sure that you keep an eye on the other income streams as well, and maybe try them out if they work for you. Embrace something new in form of a pilot. And again, there you could maybe attract funding and saying, actually, we need to pivot a bit, we need to change a little bit. And there will be probably, it'll be easier to get funding for a new project in which you're trying something that's new to you, because funders want to support you to try out new things as well, because you obviously need to evolve as well. So I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely, thank you for that. Now I am going to ask a question of everybody here, and I'm going to send it out on the second and final poll, which I am going to launch now. And that's asking you which of the income streams you've learned about today you think might make a difference for your organisation or project. So you've got a minute or so to answer that. Please do answer as soon as you can. And while you're doing that, I'm just going to say what a brilliant whistle-stop tour of the funding options out there, Corinna. And I will be sending round the information already mentioned in an email by the end of the week. And if there are any unanswered questions, I know we had one, we'll be including that, the answer to that in the mailer. And it's only left for me to say thank you to everybody for taking your lunchtime to come along today. And thank you especially to Corinna for sharing your knowledge so generously. It's brilliant to have someone who knows so much and is so eloquent, articulate when coming to share all of that information. So you can connect with Corinna at Funding Doctor on Twitter. You can also connect with Semble at Semble UK on Twitter. I'll share both of those in the chat now. I'll also be putting links to Corinna's website so that you can look her up in the mailer that we send out. Of course, this has been the second in a 3-part workshop series, and the third and final session will be building a funding strategy, as Corinna has mentioned. So kind of how to economise and budget for success. And that will be run on Tuesday, the 15th of September at the end of the day rather than lunchtime. And you can you can register now on Semble's Eventbrite page to be the first to hear when the tickets for that session are released. Do register on the Eventbrite page for that notification, because they do sell out very quickly, these sessions. Now, before I let you all go, a final thank you to Corinna, and please do put your thoughts in the chat, any parting ideas, any parting thoughts, anything that you found particularly helpful. We always love to hear back from the people in the webinar, and often these sessions we have our microphones off and it's more of a conversation, so it's nice to be able to hear from you all through the chat. Thank you to those of you who've left your video, and it's really nice to get a sense of people being out there and all of us connecting. Otherwise it can feel quite disconnected speaking into the void, so it's great to see you all, and thanks for coming along.
Thank you all. Thank you for your lunchtime, lunch and learn. Take care. See you soon.
Thank you so much.